So let's go here first. This was all over the blogosphere over the weekend. Supporters are urging Joe Biden not to debate Donald Trump. Here's my favorite quote from this. This is right underneath the picture here. Biden, now this is something a supporter said. Biden shouldn't feel obligated to throw Trump a lifeline by granting him any debates at all. That's a real quote, Margaret. That's a quote. Yeah. They're acknowledging that not only are they scared for Joe Biden to debate Donald Trump, but they're saying if he does, he's doing Trump a favor. They don't see a problem.
You know, there has been lately, another thing I'll mention briefly, a lot of propaganda meant to try to pull Biden over the finish line. You keep reading, Trump's going to quit. Trump should quit. This or that Republican doesn't really like him. I don't see Trump quitting. It's not in his personality to do that. Even if he should lose, he would go down in flames before he would leave. So the other problem with Biden, the problem is Biden himself. That's why I'm skeptical of these polls that show him so far ahead of Trump. He's going to win in a landslide. No, if he wins, it won't be a landslide. There's something wrong with him. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, he's not well. He's not a healthy man. I'm a lay person. I can't say what it is, but he isn't well. He has some cognitive problem. He doesn't know where he is, confuses his wife with his sister, says something crazy every time they allow him to be in front of a camera. So now we're going to hear he doesn't have to debate because that could help Trump. This is the beginning. This is the opening salvo of trying to rescue him by keeping him from being in a debate. I think COVID has helped him. You can't have, or you should not have large rallies at this point. So all of the pressing of the flesh that candidates usually would do just a few months before Election Day, he can't do. They've hidden him in his basement. When he is on camera, it's some sort of catastrophe. So I'm not at all surprised to see this. And I would not be. Now, it's interesting. Trump may demand a debate. What do you do then? But they are acknowledging that this man, they foisted upon us. They deep sixed Bernie Sanders campaign. They chose him, and they can't trust him to be on camera.
I think that it goes, I mean, I think I agree with everything you said. And I think because of the pandemic, that's the only reason there's even like a conversation at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, before everything got as nuts as it's gotten with this pandemic, I said, there's no way in hell Biden has any chance. I even refuse to use the words Biden winning, because if Biden does become president, Biden didn't win. Donald Trump just beat Donald Trump. Right. This is not a contest. This is Donald Trump going up against himself. And he's actually right now kind of beating himself. Although, again, I've said this too. I think this is the first presidential election in my lifetime where I'm actually not sure either candidate wants to win. I actually think
Trump didn't want to win the first time.
Right?
Lest we forget, he hoped to come in second and somebody else would be the nominee. He wasn't planning to get the nomination and then didn't think he was going to defeat Hillary Clinton. So this is the second time he doesn't want to win. I mean, Biden, it's hard to say if he knows, and I'm not trying to just disparage him and make fun, but I don't know if he knows what's going on at times. So I think you have a good point there. It's hard to say what they want, but Trump has a huge ego. On the other hand, if he had good sense, he would not be running for re-election. But I think he hates to be defeated. And whenever he's asked about his legacy, all he does is talk about Russiagate being a hoax, which it was. It was a fraud. But so no, he's like the accidental president and president during a pandemic. So I wouldn't be surprised if his heart isn't in it, but if anybody could still lose to him, it's Joe Biden.
Accidental President needs to be a book someday. I don't even know if it's going to be about Donald Trump. It just has to be a book, period.
It has to be him. He's the guy. I mean, the other accidental presidents were, the guy before them died in office or something. But he ran for a job he didn't think he was going to get. And
he wanted to start a network.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He hoped to do well in the primaries, and he would leverage that to start a television network. That was his big goal. But he ended up winning. And we are stuck with this person thanks to the Democratic Party. The Democrats are entirely to blame for him squeaking through in the Electoral College. I don't see any evidence that they're protecting the vote the way they ought to. Republicans always win by stealing Black people's votes, and I don't see any action on cross-check or the voting machines, or even if there's a lot of mail-in voting, the spoiled ballots, the black voters have their votes thrown out more often, and not to mention problems with turnout. I just don't see it. I can imagine him winning again. It's not out of the question.
I feel the same way. And we recently just had Greg Palast on this show, and I read his most recent book, and it's like, look, the numbers are there. And some of my, some of my more, centrist friends and stuff, I'm like, look, you want to talk about election integrity and what could happen again. You don't need to look at some meme that maybe came from Russia. You need to look at what's going on in our own country and the roles that they are purging. And it happens time and time again. And it's about to happen again. And I'm with you. Again, originally I said there's no chance. I mean, Donald Trump is going to get reelected. Biden, there's no way in hell, because when you give people nothing to vote for and only something to vote against, it doesn't frickin' work. It just doesn't work. Because of this pandemic, and we are in such unprecedented times, I do think there is a chance now that Donald Trump could beat Donald Trump.
Yes.
But that is not guaranteed.
No.
And yeah, these people, they're talking landslide, they're talking this, and it's like, does your memory not go back 4 years?
Well, they know this is BS, and they know they're doing it. This is a propaganda campaign. It's going to be a landslide. Trump can't possibly win. You mentioned Greg Palast. Every 4 years, he writes a book about how elections are stolen in this country, and every 4 years, nothing changes. I think 4 years later, people still have not accepted that he won. His election was such a trauma, I think, and it has not helped that instead of talking about how he won, we've heard about the Russians. We've heard about everything except the fact that more than 60 million people looked at him and said, yeah, I'll vote for him. And I don't see any reason to believe that those people are going to vote for Joe Biden. I think there may be a lower turnout, but Biden is not talking about. It's a completely negative campaign. There's a website, Settle for Biden. This is supposed to be helping him.
I know. At first, when I saw that, Margaret, I got bummed out. And the reason I got bummed out is because whenever a new satire website comes up and they don't invite me to be a contributor, it hurts my feelings. And then I found out that's not
These are people who actually trying to get him to win.
I was like, they didn't email me. That bumps me out. I could have come up with some stuff for this. And I was like, oh, wait, no, they're for real. They're serious. For real.
And so we have, I try to challenge people, and people get so defensive because they don't want to think about Trump winning again. I say, look, without talking about Supreme Court, without mentioning Donald Trump by name, what's the reason for people who are sitting on the fence or not motivated to vote? Why should they vote for Joe Biden? And nobody can ever answer the question. It boils down to, we've got to get rid of Trump. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in and out of the hospital, and and that's it. That's all. Nobody has an affirmative reason to vote for him. They haven't. Just pick one thing for him to run on that people need. But this is the problem. The Democratic Party donor class does not want him to talk about any of the things that would actually help him win. So Medicare for all, that's out. Raising the minimum wage, that's out. Free public college, they say he supports it, but he's not really saying what they do. So people are still going broke because they get sick. Now we have millions of people out of work. No talk of a jobs program, no talk of any of the things that would get people out to vote. There are millions of people who are not motivated voters, and I don't shame them anymore. I don't criticize them anymore. Nobody gives them a reason to vote. And that's still true now. And this idea that just talking about Trump will get people motivated to vote for Biden is false. So people better strap themselves in, and people saying, we can't survive Trump, we can't. I said, well, we survived the past 3.5 years. We'll survive, but he can still win.
Oh, absolutely. And getting back to this specifically regarding the debates. Now, and this goes beyond, first of all, if anyone's like, well, COVID, like, no, we can have a virtual debate. Okay.
Yeah,
like we can have a virtual debate.
They can be only two guys on a stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or something. I mean, come on.
Or they can do it, they can do a stream where Biden will probably not look at the camera half the time, but whatever, they can do that. Like it's very plausible. Yeah, there are ways to do this. So putting that aside, and they're saying, well, don't debate. And they're using all these like, well, Trump just lies so much. Like, oh yeah, he's the first politician who has ever lied. That's never happened before until Donald Trump showed up. That's never been a thing. Yeah. But also, here's the other thing. Donald Trump has completely, calling this pandemic mishandled is an understatement. There's not a word in the English language to describe how this administration, which Donald Trump is on top of, has handled all of this. There's not a word for it. It's been beyond a disaster. Right. However, there are people who, when they're picking a president, they still respond to strength. And let me ask you this, because my answer is I don't know of anything that exists like this. Have you ever heard of a story or a movie or a book or anything in the world, Margaret, where the hero doesn't confront the bully?
No, that's every fairy tale, Harry Potter. I mean, you name it. You've got to face the villain. If Biden loses and Democrats don't rise up and grab their pitchforks and march on the DNC, then I really fear for this country. This is disgraceful. And with COVID, but there's something else going on with COVID. There are a lot. First of all, let's not forget there are more than 60 million people who voted for him in the first place. There are people who still say it's a hoax. There are people who say it's a plot. People talk about, what's his name? Bill Gates is the villain, or they're anti-vax, or don't tread on me, or any number of things, who are not going to blame Trump. And there's something else, too, that I should say. There are people who like him, and nobody wants to admit it. There are people who find him appealing. The things that I find grotesque and you find grotesque, when he marched out of the White House and tear-gassed people to hold up a Bible upside down outside of a church, there are people who eat that up. And in fact, I think Trump's only political skill is that he knows his people and he knows what they like. And they did not stop liking him. There are people who like the racism. They like the kids in cages. They like everything he does. And the fact that people brought guns to force the country to reopen so that the virus could spread, I don't know what else to tell people. I still think there's a lot of denial about the fact that he has an appeal. And I also think people lie about supporting him. I think you have to give him.
It happened the first time.
Yes.
It happened the first time.
You've got to give him 5 extra percentage points for many.
I agree.
Whatever it's supposed to be. And people forget, did we forget about the Electoral College? What are the polls showing in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin? What are those polls showing? How do you measure who is or isn't going out? I can't believe these polls. I mean, they could be right. Biden could win, but I'm not depending on them. I'm not hanging my hat on any of that stuff.
I think it's 50-50 right now. I really do. I think it's 50-50. And you know, the other thing, you know, you mentioned the one things Trump's good at in regards to his base. The other thing I will say that Trump knows how to do is he really knows how to play the news cycles big time. Here's what happened a couple days ago. Donald Trump was talking real big about a stimulus that he knew was not going to happen, and it was going to come off making him look incredibly weak when Republicans weren't going to do anything that he suggested. It was going to make him look terrible. Another thing that happened, he didn't attend John Lewis's funeral. Another thing that happened, Herman Cain died shortly after attending the Tulsa rally. So what does Trump do? He goes on Twitter and he says, maybe we should delay the election. And what is the only thing anybody talks about that day? Donald Trump is suggesting delaying the election. He can't do that. He's scared. Resistance. And it worked out again for him. Dodged all those other bullets for this just rhetorical game.
Sure. And I you know, and this is the thing that annoys me. Well, there's so many reasons to be annoyed with the corporate media. But instead of explaining to us how Election Day is established and telling us that it isn't going to happen, they repeat it as if it's something that's real. Excuse me, Trump says we can delay the election. No, he can't. Congress has to change Election Day, and that's not going to happen. He can't stay in office if he loses. January 20th, somebody else is president, even if he locks himself in the basement. So no, he can't do these things. But instead of informing people, instead of giving us the civics class that we need, they feed into him because he's good copy, which helped him win the first time.
Oh, big time.
They get ratings, they get clicks when he says something crazy. And yes, he does know how to use the news cycle. He does plan when to make these statements. He's such a polarizing figure, and he knows it, and he is on purpose. So he knows when to drop these little rhetorical, these little rhetorical bombs and get attention and deflect attention away from what people ought to be paying attention to. And the same media who will repeat that he, says he can delay the election, they never talk about what we just talked about vote theft, about how elections, they never talk about that. But they will let him hold court and talk about something that isn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your